Today on Locked On Hornets, we go through what was a rough weekend recap. Miles Bridges, is he living up to the contract? And finally, we get to check in after 20 games, getting close to 30 games. We check in on the stat draft from the beginning of the season. That's all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets. It's the boys. We're back together, baby. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Find his subtext information there as well. And I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs, they're almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, your favorite podcast, it does have a newsletter now, introducing the Locked On Hornets daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now. LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. I got some bad stuff to catch up on here. I was not here for the show with the Wizards. After the Wizards, they beat the Hornets. I think that was on Thursday. You and David did a little bit of a recap show there. We have Philadelphia to discuss, where LaMelo did not suit up in this game, was resting after he had suffered that injury. So this was some load management for LaMelo. Mark Williams also did not.
No, we don't call it load management anymore. We call it injury management.
There's
so
a
his
difference.
left calf. Brandon Miller also on injury management. That's what we call it now. We don't call it load management. Otherwise, you get a call from Adam Silver.
Yeah, well, it's injury management for sure. It is, and look, the Hornets actually have a case for that. It's like, okay, fine, call it whatever you want, Adam. We're banged up, okay? You can call me, you can call whoever. We're banged up. This is injury management. If you want a team to be fielded, then we need to get healthier. So please let us manage our injuries. Mark Williams and Brandon Miller, by the way, is also going to be out for this game against the Rockets tonight too, which is unfortunate. So LaMelo not on the injury report. Neither was Mark Williams. So some guys coming back, but they weren't here for Philly. And so that means, Doug, they lose 108-98. And it started off bad. First quarter, Philly just goes out to almost a 20-point lead. And even with what was a tough offensive second quarter for Philly, even still, this is an issue. The Hornets can't dig themselves into this kind of hole, and without all of those guys on the court, expect themselves to dig themselves out of it. And so that was the issue. Even if there was some pretty close basketball for the most part the rest of the way, the first quarter was really the separator, and you just didn't have anybody capable of taking over offensively. And so this is how you lose a game by 10 points, and this is how you lose the first quarter by close to 20.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that this game was a 6-point game, with almost 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. It was 100-94, and that came on a Miles Bridges three. We're going to talk more about him coming up, but it was really his fourth quarter that made it any kind of competitive game. But I don't think that the Hornets were realistically ever a threat for Philadelphia, who finally got Embiid back, had the crazy looking mask on, but he's back, and so they had their big three. So I think this was going to be a win in most of the universes in the multiverse. And so what I wrote down, really my only take from this game, is that with LaMelo on injury management, with Brandon questionable but seemingly not really questionable, seems like he just needs some more time, and they're being patient with a lot of these injuries. I don't think that this is a real season, and I think this is the third season in a row in which we don't have a legitimate Hornets season to talk about. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. What do the Hornets do with Miles Bridges? What is LaMelo's cap on his career? Where does Brandon Miller go after this second year that's been a little bit of a struggle? And how do the Hornets, tool up and put some guys around LaMelo and Brandon that can actually go and compete for this thing? A lot of interesting things to talk about, but one of them won't be like game to game, win, loss, how many wins are going to pile up this season. And it is, I'm sure it's getting exhausting for us. It's getting exhausting for fans. I'm sure it's also exhausting LaMelo Ball as well. And Brandon Miller, the guys that actually want to pile up wins for Charlotte.
Well, and remember the last show we did together, that would have been Wednesday of last week. That was before the Wizards game. And we were already somewhat on the breaking point. We had conversations back and forth on whether it was time to give up on the season in terms of wins, in terms of goals of reaching the play-in, using the play-in to get to the playoff. Could you even get a home play-in game? Was that salvageable at all? I don't think either of us really thought that was realistic anymore. But getting a 10 seed, right? It's realistic to think at that time they possibly could get to a 10 seed. And then can you just give me a respectable play-in game, not get blown out by 30? But you and I were both kind of kicking around the idea, man, this is tough, right? So the 10-game stretch that you had after the Indiana victory, we all knew Philadelphia a couple times, Detroit a couple times, Washington a couple of times. This is it. This is how you set yourself up to go into some of these road trips. And even the road trips could take you out of it completely. But you had to do something respectable here to even still come out on the other side in the conversation. And here they are losing all of the games. So we have that conversation Wednesday. I don't know if this felt like it to you. It felt like the turning point into this season isn't going to be goals anymore. This season isn't going to be about individual goals as far as team success, getting to the play-in anymore. It felt like the Wizards' loss was the turning of the page on that. And then here it is, only accentuated with another loss by Philadelphia and with Brandon Miller not coming back in this game against Houston. Houston, good basketball team. Good basketball team, good defense. We saw that the Hornets got that win on the opener, but since Houston is the second best defense in the NBA, and we can talk about them maybe a little bit later, but you get the idea. It doesn't get any easier, literally, does not get any easier than the worst team in the NBA in Washington, and they take an L. It doesn't get much easier than a banged-up Philly team, which isn't necessarily the case this last time, but they've played banged-up Philly teams 2 times before that. Doesn't get any easier than that, and here they end up losing those games too. It felt like the Wizards' loss, Doug, was the turning point of, okay, yeah, we know how this season is going to go because we've seen it 2 years in a row already.
And it's not, I will say it's not just injuries. I mean, it's guys not really performing and surprising you with their level of play, but I'll just particularly shine a light on shooting. I mean, in this game, Josh Green, 0 for 1 from 3, only took 4 field goal attempts, 4 points. Miles Bridges, 1 of 7 from 3. Cody Martin, 1 of 3 from 3. Vasa Micic in 33 minutes was the best performer in the game, and he hasn't been much this season, but he was 7 of 14 from the field, 3 of 8 from 3, 20 points, 4 assists. So shout out Vasa. He stepped up big and helped to keep them competitive as well. And so you're depending on guys like Tijon Salon that can't guard anybody. He was 2 of 5 from 3. Isaiah Wong, 11 points off the bench. Daquan Jeffries, 12 points off the bench. And it's just, they don't have enough offense to compete with any kind of legitimate competition. It's only scoring 98 points in this game, but the offense overall has just been miserable. And it doesn't, I think it's existential, right? Because like you look at the last game against the Wizards, and I forgot to bring this up when I was having the conversation with David, but they like blew the Wizards out in points off of turnovers, in second chance points, in a lot of the categories that you look at and go, man, if a team gets an advantage in all of these, if they check all of these boxes, like 999 times out of 1,000 games, they're going to win that game. And they didn't, because this offense, the defense is bad, and then the offense gets super stagnant. And they can't even just, get these wins where it's obvious they should have gotten that win against Washington. So, there's a lot. I think this sets up the trade deadline as an opportunity to come. If the pre-Peterson trade deadline was about gathering assets, I think this one needs to be about gathering assets and retooling, moving away from players that aren't going to deliver enough shooting to make you competitive in the future. Like Kelly Oubre in this game, 8 of 10, 4 of 6 from 3, 22 points on a value contract. Would love to have that in a Charlotte Hornets uniform again.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're right about that. It feels like we had the turning point Thursday, somewhat within the weekend. Now we know exactly how the season is going to go because, again, we've seen it the last couple of years. You're right. Injuries, clearly a big deal. I do think you start to see some of the talent bear out, but also... Yeah,
they can't steal one. There's a universe in which the Hornets are injured, and then they could. But you even go back to those games where LaMelo was hurt, and it's 4-point loss, 6-point loss, 1-point loss. Great efforts, but they can't steal a game right now. And the reason they can't steal a game is because nobody can shoot. And now that belief has set in, and now you've seen the defense slip, which Lee has been able to hold for a while. And now that's starting to slip.
And I also don't think anybody can set the table. So if you can't shoot and nobody is a table setter out there to get you better looks, and that's way true in the fact that you got LaMelo out there, and that's about it in terms of who do you feel like can get you a good shot and work everybody else in the offense. And when LaMelo's not out there, everybody just flat out gets worse. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Oh, there's Doug Branson, but you can put it right back on me. It's a solo show. You got used to it. Give me the shine, baby. Bring me the neon sign. We just talked about guys get worse without LaMelo on the floor. Is that true of Miles? And how much has Miles lived up to his contract that he signed this past offseason? We'll get to that in just a moment here on LOH. This episode is brought to you by Skylight. If you're trying to find a gift for a group of people, and if you come from a big family, it could be hard and expensive to buy each one a personal gift for the holidays. Oh my God, this is me every single holiday. Then we've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Just set up in 60 seconds or less. Seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email, and there's no account or subscription required. That's great. We don't need any more subscriptions in our life. You can also add new photos straight from your phone, and you can do so from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop, and they'll feel so much more connected to you. And finally, gift mode makes it easy and makes it very meaningful, and it makes it a personalized gift. So you can preload with a bunch of memories without opening the box. That's pretty crazy. Surprise them with old sentimental photos as soon as it's plugged in. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME. Skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. This episode is also brought to you by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, you want to have a Miles Bridges conversation?
Let's do it.
Okay. So Miles Bridges was a conversation point all offseason long, and he has been the last few off seasons for.
Why? What happened?
Yeah, exactly. Off the court stuff. This one was more so like basketball stuff. This one was more so, where does he fit within the scheme? And also the off the court stuff has a large deal to do with this, right? When you get arrested for a felony domestic violence charge, then that has to go into the equation of whether you keep that guy a part of your organization. and how long do you keep that guy a part of your franchise? This year, he's averaging 16.3 points. That's as low a point total that he's averaged since 2020, 2021. He's shooting 28.7% from three. That's his lowest mark since ever in the NBA. He's averaging 6.8 rebounds. That's around the mark that he averaged the last couple of years. 3 assists, that's mostly around the mark that he's averaged the last couple of years. He's doing so in just under 30 minutes a game. He's played in 15 contests so far. So actually a little bit more banged up than we've seen from Miles before. He used to be the Iron Man when eligible to play. He was suiting up for the Hornets, didn't have many injuries. And by the way, just one more stat for you. From the field, he's shooting just about 42%. That's his lowest mark ever. He came close to that, 42.4%, his second year in the league. Not great, honestly. Not a lot of games. So if you wanted to get to the 20-game sample where most people will tell you can start to take away some real stuff, then that's fine. But it's not been great for Miles Bridges. I think it's pretty clear he hasn't lived up to the contract as of now, but there are also things that maybe stats can't measure. Maybe the defense is something that you like. I think he still falls asleep at the wheel, and most people would tell you that they don't like the defense. I'll let you answer this. Do you think that there's a chance that Miles does live up to the contract, and how close has he come to living up to the contract so far?
Yeah, so the contract, 3 years, it averages out at $25 million a year, but he's making $27 million this year. It descends to $22 million in the final year, which is a good deal for the Hornets because it makes that contract more attractive to other teams as you go on. Has he lived up to the contract like in a vacuum? Your second highest player, your second highest paid player? No. I mean, obviously, and you read the stats there. I'll give you one more from Cleaning the Glass. His points per shot attempt this season, 105.7. You compare that to last season, 113. The season prior, his best, several years ago because he missed an entire season, but that was 118.6. So you're talking about nearly 14 points per shot attempt down, and that's 12th percentile, by the way, that 105.7 number. So it's near the bottom of the league among forwards this year. So highly inefficient scorer. Yeah, he's not making up a ton on the defensive end of the floor, moving the basketball well this year, 15.7% assist percentage for a forward, but you're not looking for that a lot at that position. He has gotten his bounce back for sure. He previewed that, and he's shown some hops again, which he didn't show all that much last season. LaMelo, a big part of that, feeding him these lobs that we've seen him yam down recently. So all that's cool. I think how you view this is important. If you view his contract as like, oh, he's the second highest paid player on the team, I need him to contribute a lot more, then you're going to be disappointed. If you look at what the Hornets did and say to yourself, well, maybe they didn't want to lose him for nothing. And so you give him a contract that's beneficial to the team as you move forward. And honestly, if they move it early with picks, then you could view that contract as essentially a money filler on a deal to bring back a player who's already either in a sign and trade or is already being paid a lot of money. And so when that opportunity strikes, they've got a player that all you have to do is have that player play well enough that you could sell another team on, the Hornets stink. And so a lot of players around that orbit are going to stink. But if he comes and plays for you, he won't stink. And I think if I view it through all of those lenses, I'm kind of okay with this performance. Like, it's not great, but it also hasn't been apocalyptically bad to the point where I'm like, okay, this guy's not movable at all. That hasn't happened, so I'm still okay with it.
Well, but the thing is, I think the idea that he'll be better with better teammates, I think, one, you can probably apply that argument to most players in the NBA. So there's that. Also, better with better teammates, he has to fit well, what's the real transitionable skill? It's shooting, and Miles has had the one outlier shooting season in his career, and this year that's bearing out to be true once more. In fact, he's shooting the lowest mark from three that he shot in his entire NBA career to this point. You might also argue, well, hey, Miles plays better with LaMelo, guys, and LaMelo's been banged up. Remember, Miles has been banged up. Well, they've played 13 games together, and the stats, like, honestly, I'm not going to read them all over again. They're very similar. So they're very, very similar when LaMelo and Miles have played the 13 games together that they have. I know that other things are added into the equation. You got to try to figure out how to work with the second overall draft pick that would have been rookie of the year in another class that didn't include old Chet and generational Wemby. Like, so yeah, of course, Brandon has to be a part of this too. Sorry, you just have to figure out how to play with that guy. And then in a 3 system, you can maybe blame Charles for some of not trying to accent Miles' strengths. I think they've tried to get him going downhill a little more. They draw some open looks for him every now and then. At the same time, it's pretty clear, yeah, Miles, even with you considering this being a descending contract that only gets more valuable as the collective bargaining agreement brings you more money, as the NBA starts to get a little bit deeper into the or gets closer to that contract, and then Miles' money comes down, great. Yeah, it's not been, I think, what you wanted, even knowing the role that he was going to play this season.
Yeah, his rim percent, you're right. I mean, he has been getting downhill more. Like, if you look at his frequency, 82nd percentile, and the percentage of shot attempts at the rim, and everything else is below average. So, he's really making it a point to get to the rim.
Which is good. You want more of that.
But the accuracy,
that's right,
64% is in the 36th percentile. So he's not hitting at the rim.
Which was true last year.
Yeah.
Which was true. This was true last year as well.
And so what translatable skill. There is no translatable skill to a team that's wanting to compete, and so that's what there are going to be options for moving a player. Okay, and sometimes the options are, we could sell a team on this guy being integrated into their offense in a particular way. Maybe it's a starter who becomes a bench player who gives them a certain thing, and you can bring back a number of second-round picks or maybe even a first-round pick. To me, that's out the window with Miles Bridges. Now you're talking about either using him as money filler on maybe to help a team facilitate a deal. Okay, that could, maybe with the apron rules, you can use that $27 million to help another team. That is a way you could possibly bring it back a first-round pick in exchange for a Miles Bridges. Or you wait until the offseason and then, try to work a deal for a disgruntled star that's making a little bit more money and use that as filler. To me, that becomes the option. And again, viewed through that lens, what Jeff Peterson and company did by re-signing Miles Bridges, or the organization did, I should say, in re-signing Miles Bridges, is that you give yourself options. And there still is an option on the table. But of course, I think the team would have ideally wanted Miles to play better so that they had more options for one of these teams like Sacramento that is sort of trying to figure out, are they buyers or sellers? Could you have sold them on a Miles Bridges who is shooting better from 3 and shooting better at the rim? Absolutely. You just can't do that now.
Yeah, and last thing too, Brandon Miller has missed some time. It's not been long stretches of time that he's missed. But if that's the case, and then you see Miles and LaMelo out on the court at the same time, well, we certainly got that at the beginning of the year. But remember, Miles had a bunch of struggles. We had to have the whole, hey, Charles, draw up some ATO plays for Miles to try to get him going so he can see the basketball go into the hoop.
Which is like, he's your second highest paid player. Why do we need to draw up a bunch of stuff to get him going? He should just get going.
So, he's not getting to the free throw line a lot. You've had a couple games. You had the game against Atlanta, the second game of the year. You had the game against Detroit. He was 9 of 9. He was 8 of 8. We've always known Miles to be an actually outstanding free throw shooter. Like, when he gets there, he's very, very good at knocking them in. The efficiency just hasn't been there. My point, by the way, before I got off on a tangent myself, was like Brandon Miller, even when he was out, now you start to get something a little closer to home in how Miles operates. And man, like, even when you put Grant out there possibly, or even Nick Richards, if you view Mark as a plotter that kind of closes up the paint, even if you're trying to give people more space to operate, well, Mark wasn't there at the beginning of the season. At the start of the year, that should have looked more like what Miles had become accustomed to. LaMelo's out there. There's no Brandon. You got space seemingly to operate with, especially with the whole shooting barrage, and yet still we're talking about a guy that missed the mark quite a bit. Look, it would not be crazy at all for him to turn this thing around. I think Miles is a talented enough basketball player that this could turn around for him, that he could settle into his role. It's only been 15 games that he's played, so that makes sense. If he turns this thing around to a certain degree, that would make sense to me. But we do know that the efficiency wasn't there, even if the volume was last season, and the efficiency nor the volume really is there this year, which if the volume and efficiency isn't there, then it's tough to live up to a contract.
Yeah, I don't have faith that he's going to suddenly become the shooter that he was pre, the year that he missed. I just don't have any. I don't have any faith
shooting.
in that. And shooting, yes. And the problem for me is when people ask me like, "What's wrong with the Hornets?" I'm like, guys, it's really simple, right? Teams right now that are successful, and I'm talking about teams that are in the middle of the pack to the top of the heap. They all at some point can play 5 out, and the best teams can always play 5 out. The Hornets right now are playing 2 out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that bad. The offense is that bad where you really, you're lucky if you can get 3 guys out there that you could depend on that a defense is going to react to when they're at the 3-point line and try to run them off. And that's when LaMelo and Brandon are healthy, which they haven't been this season. Okay. And I will say too, we've had a lot of discussions about LaMelo Ball and what he's been able to do at the rim and what he hasn't been able to do at the rim and drawing fouls and him getting frustrated by that. So a lot of that, and I don't know if we've talked enough about this, is that when he goes to the rim, he's seeing like 2 or 3 guys, and when you're doing that, it's going to be hard to draw fouls because that help defense is going to get over there in time to make a play before LaMelo can get an advantage and draw a foul. And so that's going to hurt. That's hurting his game as well. So yeah, it's obviously I didn't expect Miles Bridges to come in and be like a knockdown shooter. I didn't expect it to ever recover to where he was missing the season, okay? But it has to be better than this. It just has to be.
Yeah, and by the way, I think a lot of what you just said in style is going to bear out tonight against Houston because Houston is a team that helps. They help the helper. They harass you at the 3-point line. Tenacious. They're tenacious up at the perimeter. And it's really a fun defense to watch. Udoka has those guys playing well. And I think that has a lot. I think we're going to see a lot of what you just said in terms of, how they attack Miles and LaMelo, who's not on the injury report, by the way. If you look at the injury report against Houston, it's Trey Mann, disc irritation, Brandon Miller, left ankle, and of course, Grant Williams with the ACL. They're all out. Nobody else is on the injury report for this game. That means Miles is suiting up. LaMelo going to be suiting up. Mark Williams back out there. Last single thing on Miles. The injury is different for him this year. If we're trying to find some ways to give him grace, perhaps you don't want to, that's fine. If you are trying to find ways to give him grace on the court in terms of why it's not clicking nearly as much, he has missed a lot more time than we're used to. You're talking about a 3-game stretch in the early middle portion of November, and then you're talking about November 21st to December 8th. He comes back December 13th against Chicago. It's a long time to miss. And so the sample size is small and the sample size is divided up. So maybe it's a little tough for him to get it in a rhythm. But once we get a 20 consecutive game sample, perhaps we can have a little more evidence to work with here. All right, one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Speed's everywhere!
Stat draft check-in. Man, we did this in the offseason. It was one of the crazy ideas that Doug cooked up. We had a lot of fun with it. I know you guys, Doug and David, they checked in on what David's stat draft looked like. Now it's time to look at our stat draft. That's coming up next on Locked On Hornets. Before we do that, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It's thrilling, but not only can you bet on who will win the game, FanDuel also has bets for which players will score the touchdown, points each team will score. There's so many things you can bet on at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. I'm a little nervous, partly because I don't remember what I drafted. I don't remember who my Tijan Salon was, who my KJ Simpson was. I'm excited to see the progress or lack of progress that I've got going on. So, Doug, tell the people, how are we going to look at this, and let's see how we did.
Let's just run it down. We'll run yours down. We'll run mine down very quickly, just kind of get a feeling for where we're at. So Miles Bridges, your first round selection was Miles Bridges points per game under 21, which I think underscores what we all thought, which is that his production would go down. Brandon Miller being the more featured player, I don't think we expected the efficiency to drop as much as it has. So Miles Bridges right now, points per game, he's at 16.3. So I think you've got that one in the bag.
Yeah, looks good.
And let's see, Mark Williams 3-point attempts over 0. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
That's such a I know. It's such a sicko pick. I just need one. We have so much time. So panic meter on Mark Williams. And by the way, like, just because I'm nothing if I'm not fair. We can't count the heaves, right? So if there is a last second, it would count technically, but because I'm fair, I'm just going to take that off the table. We need a pass. Now, it can be at the end of the shot clock. It could be that kind of desperation, but it can't be a 40-foot heave, one-hander from Mark Williams. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Look, he shoots a lot in pregame. Or, excuse me, he shoots a lot in practice. That's something that he does a lot in practice. I still think he's going to deploy one at some point, but we're almost to 2025.
All right, so you got one. You're underwater on the other one. Mark Williams, again, your third round pick, blocks over 1.1. 1.1 last season. You went over. Right now, averaging just one block. But I think you're going to get that one. He's been.
I think so too.
Just in the games he's been back, he's been pretty active down low. So I think you're going to get that one. All right, LaMelo Ball, 2-point field goal percentage. You went over 50%. Right now, field goal percentage from 2 is 50.9%. So you're hanging in there, buddy. How do you feel about that one?
The floater is helping a lot.
Yes.
Thank you for the floater, please, because the rim percentage, it's well documented. That's not happening. I was big on LaMelo, like flirting with all NBA numbers this year, possibly sneaking into a top 15 spot. I saw one of the topics that you did last week, whether it was with David or you were going solo. I totally agree with you. Actually, I would have loved to have done that show. I guess it's my own fault. But with the topic was LaMelo missing out on accolades because of team success and because like this game restriction that might come into play with him, especially with some of the injury management stuff, and there may be nothing to play for team goal wise this year. So the LaMelo 2-point percentage, I thought that would get to something better, and we're hanging on. It's the floater doing a lot of work, but I will say if the floater stays the way it is, and I actually think the floater is here to stay. I mean, he's practiced it so much over the last couple of years, and it looks bona fide. I feel good. I would still stick with it. I wouldn't back out if given the opportunity.
Well, the floater is here to stay. I would be interested to see him. I laugh before I even say this. I would be interested to see him in the playoffs. I would be interested to see him in a 7-game series in which teams can scheme.
That'd be fun.
Because he can hit threes so consistently from so deep. Like, how do you guard that guy? How do you do teams, though, play the chess match and say, all right, we're going to try to take this floater away, and we'll just see what happens here. So that would be interesting in a playoff series to see how he's guarded. All right, final one for you. Nick Richards, games played under. I think this was you saying Richards was going to be traded.
Finally, this is the time. So how many games? He's missed some games. So the injuries, that's going to help me, even if it's a cheap way to get the win on this draft. But we'll see. I mean, it's still highly possible. He's one of the guys of value that makes sense to trade, the contract tradable, all that stuff that you've heard with the plethora of trade rumors surrounding him. So it's still on the table.
Yeah, he played 67, so far 16. So it's not, I mean, it is not only, there is a health question too, but I think Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I think Nick Richards certainly a possibility to move, but they've had so much difficulty keeping bigs on the floor, and Moussa Diabate can't shoot. And
Moussa has helped, though. I'll tell you, I tweeted this out. I forget after what game, but God, and I remember Moussa is just good defensively. I don't know where you are on like what Moussa is like as a real player. We had this conversation not too long ago where it's okay, they're good here, but then when they go to a different franchise, they're just playing for something different. The product looks entirely different, and so those guys start to stall out. Jalen McDaniels, my guy, it doesn't make it anywhere else. Devontae Graham, that value starts to plummet as soon as he's off the Hornets roster. We've seen it happen so many times. I think you could append that maybe to an Isaiah Wong. We'll see what happens with him. I think Moussa, not that he would be getting as much time. I don't think that. I think offensively, there's not a lot there. I do think his defensive instincts, self-awareness, battling for rebounds, I think that could be useful for any NBA basketball team. We're in an emergency. We need somebody to just do a whole bunch of stuff defensively. Like even the going low and poking the basketball away, even denying post-entry passes. Moussa has been phenomenal this year, and it's been fun to watch in his role. So maybe that helps trade Nick.
Yeah, I mean, to be a good team in either one of these conferences, you got to have like 8 or 9 of those guys that are willing to do the things that Moussa does defensively. Plus, you've got to have and they don't have to be the same 8 or 9 guys, although it helps, but you got to have 8 or 9 guys that can shoot the basketball. And I don't even mean from 3. I mean, the Hornets have been terrible from the mid-range as well. Like they just like legitimately cannot shoot. So yeah, I mean, you look at a guy like that and you say, great utility role player. If he were surrounded by shooters, I could buy big contributions from him.
Yeah.
But the difficulty in him getting playing time now is that he's not surrounded by any of that. So,
sure.
All right, we're out of time. I'm going to get to mine. I'm going solo on the recap episode that's going to air tomorrow for this game. So I'll save mine. I'll go over mine in the last segment of tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. I've got some interesting ones as well. I've got LaMelo Ball. I've got Brandon Miller 3-point attempts. I've got Josh Green assists. I've got Brandon Miller rebounds. I've got LaMelo Ball drives per game.
Yeah.
We'll see where I land on those.
Oh, yeah. I forget what you chose on some of them. I can guess.
I'll find out. You got to listen.
Tomorrow. Okay, yeah, so holiday scheduled coming up. Doug is going solo, and then we're going to take a couple of days off for Christmas Eve, Christmas, the holiday season, all of that. Next week, it'll also be a little weird, but we will be giving you a few episodes next week. I think 4. We're going to take off for New Year's just so everybody can anticipate what's to come. So we'll take off New Year's. I'll be going solo a few days next week, and then we should get back to some sort of rhythm the week after that. And Doug and
we're on holiday management.
We are on holiday management, and then we'll come back after taking a long break from one another. We'll come back and be the happy couple that we used to be. I'll also say just a little something. If you watch the Houston game tonight, just maybe check out the pregame and the halftime show and the postgame, just for a little bit of a reason. Terrence Oglesby does a great job. I hear that he's out tonight. So if you want to check that out.
Who would they call to replace him?
I don't know, but it should be interesting. So check that out. Whoever might fill in would be very excited and appreciative of everybody that was able to make this possible. So maybe just whoever that is. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Not only can you text him by finding his information on his Substack, you can also listen to his NBA takes. Locked On NBA, Matt Moore, Hayes, he hosts with them. So again, check out Locked On NBA wherever you get your pods. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great couple days if I don't see you before then, and we'll talk to you whenever we hop back on the mic.
It's Walker. He's subbing in.